Good evening. My name is Paul Charnier. I'm the editorial page editor at the Day newspaper. I welcome you to tonight's debate for the 20th State Senatorial District. The debate is being carried live here from the Charter Oak Federal Credit Union in Waterford and live on simulcast on theday.com. And we have a full audience here at the Charter Oak Federal Credit Union for the debate, which will feature the Democratic candidate on my left, Marx, and the Republican candidate to my right, Senator Paul Formica. The 20th district includes the towns of Basra, East Lyme, a portion of Montville, New London, Old Lyme, a portion of Old Saybrook, Salem, and Waterford. I'd like to thank the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut, which is co-sponsoring this debate along with the Day.com. Also like to thank the League of Women Voters of Southeastern Connecticut, which is providing the timekeepers for tonight's debate. And of course, the Charter Oak Federal Credit Union for hosting it. The candidates will get 1 minute openings each, and at the end of the event, 1 minute closings. During the course of the debate, we'll be alternating questions, some which came from you in the audience. We got very many emailed to us at the Day, and we'll alternate questions back and forth. The candidate who receives a question will get a minute. The second candidate will get 90 seconds to answer the question as well and to respond to what they heard, and then back to the original questioner who will get 30 seconds to sum up. So by flip of the coin, we begin with our opening statements, and first to go is Senator Formica.
Thank you very much. And good evening to everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.
I think we might be want to make sure that mic's.
I got green light. Testing 1, 2. We just checking to see volume. Green light working.
You can't hear? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure everyone could hear us. We will be having a technical difficulty. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you to the Day and to the Chamber and to the League for their participation here. Thank you, Martha, for the opportunity to come and sit and have a dialogue about the issues that are facing the state of Connecticut this evening. I have had the great opportunity of living in the 20th District in East Lyme since the early 1980s, where I had the chance to raise my family, have a business, and get involved in local government along the way. And it ends up here I am finishing my second term as a state senator. I can't tell you that if that's not the American dream, I don't know what it is. I feel so honored and lucky to have this opportunity to serve in this capacity. And I've tried very hard to work and serve all the people in the great 20th District. And I look forward to having a good dialogue this evening and to continue the opportunity over the next 2 years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Marx, your opportunity.
Hi, I'd like to thank the Day, the Chamber, the League of Women Voters, and Charter Oak for hosting us, and to Paul. My name is Martha Marx. I'm the mother of 4 children, Jillian, Sean, Madeline, and Ellen. I am the sister of 6. I am a niece. I am an aunt of 20. I have been a nurse for 33 years. I am a union leader for 120 nurses and home health aides, and I am a community leader. They will all tell you that I am an empathetic listener and I'm a tenacious advocate. For the last 2 years, Senator Formica has sat silent with the bullying rhetoric and the nefarious policy in Washington, D.C. I would never sit silent. In 2017, he passed the budget as chair of the Appropriations Committee, which decimated the 20th District. We need a change up in Hartford, and I, Martha Marx, want to be that change. I hope I can earn your vote for the 20th District State Senate seat in November. Thank you.
All right, I thank the candidates. We'll get started with questions. I guess at this point ask the audience that they please withhold any applause. Also, if you're taking photos of the candidates, please be careful of our cameras because, as I said, we're going with a live feed. We don't want to interfere with that. Beginning, first question to Senator Formica. Once again, the state is facing large projected deficits over the next 2 fiscal years in excess of $4 billion. As co-chair of the Appropriations Committee, don't you share a piece of the responsibility for the fact we once again are facing deficits?
Thank you very much. Yes, I had the opportunity to be co-chair of the Appropriations Committee, which is the expenditure side of the budget. But we inherited a situation that decimated our state over the last 33 of the last 35 years. There's been one-party control. 2 of the largest tax increases in history drove people out of the state. People are leaving, both in terms of businesses and residents. We worked hard in the last budget to produce a bipartisan budget that we passed this year, the 18-19. Can't hear? Not well. We can hear you. Can you hear me, Brad? Okay. We passed a bipartisan budget going forward with no tax increase, no need for tolls, no tax on Social Security to try to keep our seniors here, job training programs to move some of our young people into the open jobs that are here, and an emphasis on job creation. Looking forward to the budget moving forward, there are challenges, but there are also opportunities.
Thank you. You get 90 seconds, Ms. Marks, to respond to what you heard.
Thank you for that question. I'd like to make a correction that the 2 largest tax increases were not over the last 8 years, but they were Governor Weicker and Governor Rowland's, which you can read that article in the Connecticut Mirror. We had no tax increase, but he did put a 2% tax on the teacher tax, which was then on their pension, which was then to go into the general funds. He had the biggest cuts to higher education ever in American history that would have decimated Avery Point and would have decimated UConn. He cuts child care funding. He cuts the Medicare savings plan, and he cut the earned income tax credits. I can tell you as a visiting nurse that when I walked into my clients' homes and they heard that the Medicare savings plan was cut, it was a very difficult thing for them. You cannot balance the budget on the backs of seniors. He cut energy, he cut money to our green bank, and he cut the Small Business Express, all of which would increase funding to our, increase jobs for our towns. When I get to Hartford, would never make such cuts. You cannot balance the budget on the backs of children. He cuts education. He cut $1.4 million to New London.
Senator Formica, you get another 30 seconds.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if my opponent is talking about Governor Malloy or about me. In fact, we did fund the Medicare Savings Program, having to do so by switching some of the energy funds over there. That was the only reason for that cut, was because elderly and handicapped seniors were unable to get that program funded, and we were able to do that. The 1% teacher contribution to the pension goes directly to their pension. It is not a tax. It helps to subsidize the pension plan moving forward, and there was no teacher tax that went to the general fund. In terms of care for kids, we supported that program to keep people at work, and the earned income tax credit we served for. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't say
I wanted you to wrap up. I wanted to give you a chance to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
Well, I think you'll have an opportunity at this question, so because that was the format. Ms. Marks, you point out a lot of the cuts that you contended, that you were upset about. We do face a $4 billion and probably in excess of that deficit over the next few years. So how would you close that large budget deficit, if not through some cuts?
Thank you for that question. So first I want to, that if I'm not talking about Malloy's budget, I'm talking about Senator Formica as chair of the Appropriations Committee. It was his Republican budget that made all those changes. It was the changes. It was the bipartisan budget that put it back together. How I would increase revenue, first of all, we could close the carried interest loophole. We also could legalize recreational cannabis, which I am 100% for. We could, sports betting, we should already have sports betting in Connecticut. We have two of the largest casinos in the country here in Connecticut that we should have been first when it came to sports betting. We'll have online sales, and I do believe in tolls, which I believe that will, I'm sure will be a question later on.
90 seconds, Senator Formica.
Thank you. And the question was with regard to the cuts. As my opponent said, a bipartisan budget means that both parties voted on this particular budget. It wasn't just a one-person budget. We did fund all of those things that were being accused of not. The sports betting, it's estimated to take about $20 million in funding for the state, which is a very small amount, and that's going to be revisited after the election in the early part of the coming session, because it has to deal with the compact situation with the two tribes. We have to go through that. The governor is, I believe, working through that. So, in terms of the budget deficit moving forward, the pensions that we have some ideas on how to control pension once the expiration of these contracts move forward, that we can save some money moving forward with pensions. We tried to take some of the extra one-time revenues that came into this budget this year and put money down onto the pension so that we could reduce the outlying debt in the outlying years, but we were overruled on that, and that money is now in the rainy day fund, which is not a bad thing, but a better thing would have been to pay down some of the debt moving forward. So there are a lot of challenges, but I think we can manage them moving forward. Thank you.
I get another 30 seconds on this question.
Thank you. So I gave 5 reasons, 5 ways how we could increase revenue for the states. I did not hear one way that my opponent is going to increase revenue for the states. Instead, we will continue to cut the safety nets that we as Connecticutians should be so proud that we serve the people without a voice. So hopefully later on tonight we'll find how he will increase revenue.
Next question goes to Senator Formica. The gubernatorial candidate for your party, Bob Stefanowski, major plank of his platform is the gradual repeal of the state income tax. He sees as a way of spurring economic growth here in Connecticut. The question I received by email is, do you consider that a realistic goal for the legislature to set, and why or why not?
Well, the governor's candidate, Mr. Stefanowski, is proposing that over an 8-year period, and whether that's achievable or not, I don't know. My understanding is that he has put a plan out to do that in the last week. Certainly, we couldn't lose that revenue next year, but I think there's an opportunity to phase it out over time, and I, for one, would much rather have somebody going into the governor's office looking to reduce taxes for the people in the state of Connecticut instead looking to increase taxes in the state of Connecticut. So I think that that's an important goal. There was a reduction in taxes, the income tax suggested by the Fiscal Accountability Commission that was made. So people understand that the very large tax increases that Governor Malloy and the Democratic legislature implemented over the last 8 years have devastated our state, and it's time to turn the corner and do something with it.
Ms. Marx, the issue is the income tax.
The income tax pays 50% of our revenue. If anybody here thinks that we can get rid of the income tax, you're in la-la land. It will never work. That's taken away 50% of our teachers. It's taken away 50% of our firefighters. It's taken away 50% of our police officers. It's taken away our DCF workers. You'll definitely be cutting child care. You'll definitely be cutting programs for the seniors. We cannot do that. There are ways, though, that we can, I believe in the $15 minimum wage. that will we need to try to lift the people on the bottom up, the people that I am with every day in their homes who are the working poor, who have no benefits, who work 40 hours a week and cannot live a good life. We could have a $15 minimum wage. And I still yet am waiting. If you're going to cut the income tax, then I would like to know how you are going to raise revenues. I still have not heard one idea about how you will raise revenue.
Senator Formica.
The Appropriations Committee handles the expenditures of the budget. That's what my focus is generally on. Wow. Can't hear? Mr. Stefanowski's plan, is that better? Mr. Stefanowski's plan is over a period of time. Mr. Stefanowski's plan is over a period of time. We certainly couldn't affect a cut like that next year and expect to keep the services going forward. But we can, by reducing some expenditures and moving the state in the direction of lower taxes, create businesses that stay here and opportunities for the state of Connecticut to grow moving forward. And I am a job creator. I'm a small business owner, and I can give you an idea of how we can do that.
Thank you. Next question to Ms. Marks. We've got a few emails that from readersoftheday.com that feel the state labor unions have become too powerful in this state, that they are enjoying pay and benefits that exceed those that the people in the private sector have become have to live with. So the question is, do you see any potential further savings through concessions by the labor unions as you try to solve this budget problem?
Thank you for that question. I think anybody that knows me knows that I believe very strongly in labor. I believe in collective bargaining. We have a middle class. We have a strong middle class because of labor unions. And our middle class is dwindling because the labor unions, we don't have as many of them. Our nurses, our teachers, our firefighters, our policemen and women, and all those that work in General Dynamics are all part of unions. If the public sector labor chooses to come to the table, which they have done many times, then absolutely, we can sit. But it's their choice. They have a contract. They negotiated a contract with the state, and I feel very strongly that they would come to the table if we asked them. They have never not come to the table. But that is absolutely up to them because they have a contract, and that contract is written in blood, as a union member would say.
You have up to 90 seconds on the question, labor costs, Senator Formica.
So labor cost takes up a lot of the budget that we deal with each and every year. The pensions and health benefits for the labor under CBEC agreement are handled through collective bargaining. We are one of 4 states in the country that handle those deals through collective bargaining. The pension is extended to 2027, and the contracts for each union are negotiated individually in terms of pay and work conditions. If we did a few simple things post-2027, adding a % to the contribution that the workers pay into their pension, reducing or eliminating the COLA until such time as we can afford it, and reducing or eliminating the opportunity for overtime into pension calculations, we could save somewhere between $70 and $100 million this year in this budget by not accruing that liability. We have to start looking at some of those things post-2027. That doesn't break the contract. That doesn't ruin any deals that we have with people. It just says in 2027 we can begin to make change on how we treat labor unions in this state. And I think that they have very rich contracts and the opportunity to come even with the rest of the state unions around the municipal and state unions around the state. I think it's about time that we did that.
Thank you. Ms. Marks?
Once again, if labor wants to come to the table, they will, and they usually have. I will say as a nurse, I pay my bills by working overtime. And anybody that works as a firefighter or as a police officer or anybody that has mandatory overtime, will tell you, we miss a lot of family events. It's not easy to have mandatory overtime, but we do, and we do it for the safety of our communities and to take care of our communities. So absolutely, the people in labor, that is the money that they have earned and that they have to be counted for when they get their pensions.
Well, thank you. I wanted to turn to some local issues that we've received, and the next question to Senator Formica. With the new administration soon to be in charge, should we look at a different solution for the future use of the Seaside site, or are you satisfied that the state should stay the current course that was set during the Malloy administration?
Well, I'm not sure what that course was. There's not much that's happened since the press conference that the governor had when he eliminated the contract for purchase 4 years ago. There's supposed to be an opportunity for DEEP to have this property out to bid to see what type of public-private partnerships are coming in. As I've said from the beginning, I think that there's an opportunity there to either sell the parcel and manage what goes on there. The shoreline is protected along there. It can't be built within, I believe, 100 or 150 feet. So it's protected along there, and the zoning for Waterford will have to control. There are specific things that need to go on there. But so I don't think that the governor and this administration has done anything. The new administration will have to see if the RFP actually comes out. We've gone by 2 deadlines on that RFP, and we don't know. So whether the next administration is handed something binding or not, we'll have to wait and see.
Yes, we have to wait and see what happens when we get the RFPs. I will say, though, I would never, ever want to have Seaside sold. We need to keep it as a state park, the public-private partnership. We need to make sure that the public is in capital letters and is strong, and then comes the partnership. Sure, the shoreline is protected, but if you live in New London or if you live on any of these beautiful cities in their shoreline, you know that there's a lot of people that they could probably go swimming if they want to, but it's getting from your car into the water that's a little difficult. So I believe in a private-public partnership with public first and making sure that the residents of Waterford and of the 20th District have that state park.
You know, additionally, one of the ballot initiatives coming out has to do with the disposition of state property, specifically designed for parks and open space. And this, if this ballot question passes, you know, that will put another wrinkle into what happens with regard to this RFP. But the fact of the matter is these buildings, historic as they are in disrepair, almost beyond repair. So it's time that we do something before somebody gets hurt. We either got to get some big money in there to fix it, or we got to take them down if that's what's going to be the safest part. But the state has not done its part over the last few decades, and there's many people that should be responsible for that. But here we are, and we have to take the asset and see what we can make the best of it. The public will be protected because there will be always a park there. There's plenty of parking for people to enjoy that opportunity. The question is, can it generate the tax revenue to the state of Connecticut and to, or not to the state of Connecticut, but to the town of Waterford in terms of property taxes, and any money that gets sold from the sale of that property goes to support the IDD community, as that was the intent when that legislation was passed some years ago. So it would be a big boon to the agencies up there that could use a shot in the arm if we could do that, and we'd end up with a win-win situation with regard to Seaside. Thank you.
I'd like to give Ms. Marks another 30 seconds just to respond to the arguments you heard as to why it may be a good idea to put that property up for sale.
I don't have much to say except I don't believe that it should go up for sale. We have to save our public land, especially that on the shoreline. If I was up in Hartford and for 4 years and Seaside was empty, I can guarantee you I would be a tenacious advocate, and they would have had to explain to me, as the state senator of the 20th district, why nothing was happening at Seaside.
Next question is, Mark, another local issue. I was wondering, did you agree with the change in policy that allowed Millstone operator Dominion to compete as far as pricing with renewable energy providers? And do you see any need for a contingency plan in the event that Millstone was to close?
Thank you for that question. As far as whether I agree with the pricing, it's happened. Millstone is a very important part of our community. It's going to be here probably for about another 10 years. It gives us 50% of our energy. We need to make sure that we take the workers that are working at Millstone and that we retrain them in renewable energy, that they are amazing parts of our community. They volunteer, they're homeowners, they've been here for a long time. We need to retrain them with wind power and solar energy so that they can maintain their jobs and continue to live in the 20th district.
Senator Formica, we know you were a part of that legislation. So, if you comment on that, and also the second part of the question, if Eversource and UI, if Millstone is not able to win those bids, and Millstone was to close, does the state have to begin preparing now for that contingency? Was the question already?
All right. Thank you. Yes, the legislation is the beginning of preparation for the eventual closing of Dominion's Millstone Station. 13 power plants, nuclear power plants around the country have either closed or indicated they're closing before their permitted life expires, and Millstone is no exception. It's an at-risk facility, and so that we developed on the Energy Committee through a bipartisan set of leadership, because Millstone provides 50% of the power of the state of Connecticut, 30% of the power to New England, 1,500 jobs each and every day that provide $150 million, $115 million in annual salaries, 30% of the tax revenue to the state of Connecticut. To the town of Waterford. We can't let Millstone close yet. Why? Because we don't have the replacement for those 2,100 megawatts. We can't replace it. And you can't retrain workers that are versed in nuclear operations and then have them go stand by the side of a solar panel or install a solar panel, and then what's going to happen to their job after that? This is not about retraining workers. It's about keeping nuclear, which is carbon-free resource, 95% of the carbon-free resource in this state of Connecticut, keeping that operating until such time that we can move to the next generation of energy, which is renewable, and we dealt with that in SB 9, which provides the opportunity for wind and solar going forward. But if you look at what's happening in Deepwater Wind off New London, they're building 200 megawatts. That's 10% of what Millstone generates.
Thank you. Ms. Marks, another 30 seconds.
So that's why we need to continue to be putting money into renewable energy. And Senator Formica cut the Green Bank by $26 million. SB 7 this year was passed, which establishes a new benchmark, decreasing greenhouse gases by 2030 by 45%, and promoting new sources of protecting our shoreline. This is one of the best bills. It's one of the best climate change bills in all of the country. They're scientists at Millstone. They actually can be retrained, and they won't be actually installing solar panels.
Senator Formica, question we have is, what steps have you taken as a legislator, and what steps need to be further taken to ease the burden confronting property taxpayers in New London and Connecticut's other urban centers?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
What steps have you taken, and what steps need to be taken to ease the burden confronting property taxpayers in New London and Connecticut's other urban centers?
First, let me just say that SB 7 was a bill that came out of the Environment Committee that I voted on, and not SB 9, which is the one that provides the opportunity for renewable energy sources moving forward. The property tax, the one thing that we can do for property tax here in the state of Connecticut as a former first selectman is to keep our promises from the state to cities and towns. We need to keep our promises in terms of education cost-sharing funding, which has been shorted. Pilot programs, which are payment in lieu of taxes for properties that cannot collect tax revenue because they're either owned by the state or owned by others. We have to make sure that we keep our promise. So we've put together an education cost-sharing formula that takes into account all of those things that we need to provide stability to cities and towns throughout the state of Connecticut, and we funded that over a number of year basis so there can be stability by cities and towns so that they know what dollars that they have to work with and what they can do to plan.
Ms. Marks, you have 90 seconds. Again, the question is, what steps could the legislature take to ease the burden fronting property taxpayers in New London and other urban centers?
Thank you. So, sitting on City Council of New London, I can tell you it's very difficult when we get that state budget. First of all, the volatility of the state budget, we never know when we're going to get it, and we never get our pilots' money funded. We never get the municipal aid that we're supposed to get. We don't get the ECS funding. We usually do, New London usually does at the end. Waterford did not get it this year, and it was the first time that Waterford had never got it when Senator Formica was there. He is chair of the Appropriations Committee. He's the one that writes the budget. He is the author of the budget. He chairs the committee. He did not give New London the $1.4 million. He did not give Waterford the ECS money. Greenwich has a mill rate of 11, Waterford 22, New London 40. The income inequality in Connecticut, not only between its citizens, with one of the most affluent states in the country, the income inequality, we should be embarrassed, and I will fight hard to improve that. But I will also fight to make sure that the Gold Coast does not get the funding that they always get while nobody is protecting the 20th District in Eastern Connecticut.
Senator Formica, you have 30 seconds to respond to what you heard.
New London's extra money this year was about $261,000 over what they got. And the education cost sharing provides a stable formula moving forward that provides for cities and towns going forward. The budget put to the governor allowed for opportunities for him to cut dollars in the executive branch. The governor chose not to do that and instead took $91 million out of cities and towns. So it was the governor who cut that, such that in this budget we had to put a clause in there that precludes the governor from cutting municipal aid until June 30th, 2019.
Thank you. Just following up on that, as we go to the next question, and begin with Ms. Marks. You said the income inequality in Connecticut is an embarrassment. How would you go about closing that income inequality gap?
Thank you for that question. That's one of the things that drives me to want to go to Hartford. Every day as a visiting nurse, I'm in the homes of the elderly. We are keeping the elderly at home, and that's saving Connecticut a lot of money. But we are doing it on the backs of women, mostly women and men, and a lot of women of color, by paying the minimum wage. They get absolutely no benefits. It is an exploited and unregulated industry. By lifting their wage up to $15, it would completely change their lives. It's proven that companies say by increasing the minimum wage that the people stay, their employees stay at the company. Senator Formica has never voted for the minimum wage. That is one of the ways that I could talk about this for a long time, but that's one of the first ways that I would help income inequality.
Senator Formica, do you see it as the role of the legislature? 90 seconds.
Would you repeat the question
Yes,
while you're opening up too?
It
Thanks.
was raised by your opponent, Ms. Marks, that she sees income inequality as an embarrassment here in Connecticut, and she talked about one way she would do it, which is support a higher minimum wage. So, the question following on to you is, do you see that as the role of the legislature to close the income inequality gap that you see?
Well, the job of the General Assembly and any local or municipal government is to raise the quality of life for their citizens. So that's first and foremost. The fact is that when minimum wage gets raised, jobs get lost, and that should be a marketplace decision. Though I worked on raising the minimum wage for those employees that my opponent mentioned, because in the healthcare field, there's a couple. There are some that are employed directly, and there are some that are contract employees. So we did put money in for raising there to a more livable wage, and she kind of confused the question a little bit in terms of income inequality and people staying at home. So, you know, I think that everybody should get paid for the quality of work that they do, and be, you know, compensated for the work that goes on and how they do it.
Ms. Marks, would you push for higher taxes on the higher income?
Can I answer that one first, what he said?
Sure.
Sure, thanks. So I'm talking about the elderly that are staying home and not going into nursing homes. And then we put workers in there to stay with them all day long, drive them to their doctor's appointment, makes their meals. They don't get any gas mileage. And yes, this year some of the workers did get an increase because they were the ones that had a union. So that's why they got increased wages, and that's why now they finally get workers' compensation.
Another 30 seconds, just because you raised the issue of income inequality. One way to do that is to tax higher income higher than you do in the state. So I'm just trying to see if that's, you're for or against that is one way to close that income inequality gap we have in Connecticut.
So the income inequality, and you can all tell me if you think this is fair. In Greenwich, they pay, their mill rate is 11. They have a Steinway piano, and because they built a new school and they wanted that Steinway piano to stay in good tune, so they built a room that's a humidor, is that how you say it, for that Steinway piano. I have a really hard time going into the New London schools and then knowing that's what's happening in Greenwich. So would I raise tax on the 1%? Do you know the 1% in Connecticut has made 100% of the income, of increased income over the last 8 years? So I guess that 1% might not be voting for me.
Another 30 seconds. Do you want to get the fair senator on this issue?
So again, you know, reverting back to raising taxes on people that just simply have the opportunity to leave and do their business, conduct their business from anywhere in the country. They just need an office replicable to wherever they sit. 357 taxpayers pay 12% of the income tax here in the state of Connecticut. That is going down and down and down, and we can't keep driving those people out. However Greenwich chooses to run its school system, we put a fair formula together that protects the people in the districts in the 20th district with funding, and my time is up.
Thank you. Next question. This was there was a recent Quinnipiac poll, and the leading interest of the respondents to that poll was the state economy was their biggest issue. So, and we got quite a few emails on that. So simply, the emailers wanted to know what ideas our candidates would bring to Hartford to try to boost the state's economy and catch up with our neighbors as far as job creation. And you get first crack at that for the minutes.
So again, one of the things is to provide stability in state government, which we've not had. We have to provide balanced budgets in a bipartisan way to move forward so that businesses and industry and residents have the desire to want to stay here. That's first and foremost that we have to do. We have to make sure that we protect our energy sector, which we did with 50% of the baseload power, and then make the transition to renewable so that we can drive energy costs down so people can stay here and be here. We have to make sure that there's opportunities for work. The Eastern Workforce Investment Board has got small training programs going in to fill some of the vacancies that we have. We have to continue to work hard to do that at all the WIBs throughout the state to support. We have to support our community colleges, which are going backwards, and we have to make sure that UConn continues to pump out engineers at a rate they are to move where we are, but also does it in a fiscally responsible way.
Thank you. Ms. Marks, so The question is, what can the legislature do to try to drive economic growth and close the job gap we see that's job creation with some of our neighbors?
Thank you. Manufacturing jobs are actually up 4.8% in southeastern Connecticut in the 20th district in the last 10 months, I believe. Electric boats, we have to continue to partner with them. We just gave them money to to work on construction of the docks, and we have to continue to put money into the Eastern Connecticut manufacturing pipeline, which has proven to have increased jobs. He wants to support community colleges and support UConn, yet the Formica's budget cut, devastating, the biggest cut to higher education ever in American history. So when I'm writing the budgets, that would never happen, and I would put more money into UConn, into the community colleges. But Senator Formica says one thing, but then his actions when he authors the budget are completely different.
Well, again, this was a bipartisan budget voted overwhelmingly by 133 people in the House, 17 people voted against it in the House, 33-3 in the Senate. And those cuts from the original budget that the governor vetoed were restored in UConn, but the fact of the matter is UConn bleeds a lot of money, and they can do a lot better with the money that they have. So, actually, I forgot what the question was after that.
So the question originally was trying to grow the economy here in Connecticut.
Oh, move the economy. So I don't know. Do I have any time left, or am I out? 10 seconds. So let's talk about, we lowered the tax on boats here in southeastern Connecticut. There's a big marine industry along southeastern Connecticut. Rhode Island had 0 sales tax. New York had very low sales tax. We had 6.35. We were losing sales to Rhode Island, which meant the jobs went to Rhode Island, the services went to Rhode Island, everything went to Rhode Island. We were able to rectify that this time.
Thank you. Next question to Ms. Marx. Do you support installing electronic tolls on Connecticut highways to fund transportation needs? If not, if so, why? And if not, why not? Tolls.
Thank you. I do support electronic tolls. Both Massachusetts and New York and Rhode Island all have tolls. I don't believe that being a business person makes you a good legislature. I think they're completely different. But if I was a business person, I certainly wouldn't let the 3 businesses around me be charging people to drive on the roads when we were not charging. We have to make our city stronger. That is why the young people, although I don't believe there's a mass exodus of young people, I can tell you a lot of them who are building homes and staying here, but we have to make our cities strong, and that means we have to make our roads better and public transportation, and we will use that money from tolls in a lockbox to improve our transportation system.
Can you get 9 seconds to respond to the position on tolls?
So the governor and his Democratic majority diverted $137 million from going into the Special Transportation Fund, causing the discussion on tolls because they had to come up with an idea for revenue to fill the Special Transportation Fund before it went bad. Tolls in 1983 were taken out because of the horrific accident down in southwestern Connecticut. Part of that deal included that we would get a higher rate of return on the federal money that we send, that we collect from our highways down to the feds. We get about 70 cents for every dollar that we send in. Those toll states, New York and New Jersey and Massachusetts, get about 35 cents in return. If we put tolls just on the border, we would have to return the delta between those 2 numbers that we've collected over time. Now, we don't know if that's a good deal or not a good deal, but it's a whole hell of a lot of money. And the fact is that tolls that would be inserted on this state, if we did not put them around the borders, and if we put them everywhere, they're talking about 70 to 72 tolls that would have to be put in, making us the highest tolled roads in the country, where 70 to 75% of that money comes from people that live and work in the state of Connecticut. So I think we have a lot more work to do before we decide on tolls, and they're not the answer. We have a Republican plan, prioritized progress, that is a capital infrastructure plan that will rebuild our infrastructure, roads and bridges, without stressing the Special Transportation Fund.
Thank you. Another 30 seconds to respond, Ms. Mark.
I would just ask how you're going to pay for that money. So in Kathy Austin's debate, she said that it was actually malarkey, I believe, was the word she used, about federal money being taken out, getting federal money for having no tolls. She also said that no money came out of the transportation funds. Senator Formica asked for a study. Every time over the last 4 years that anybody has asked him about tolls, he said he needed a study. Now we have a study that is happening, which I don't think we need. I think it's obvious we need tolls. But we're going to have our study, and so maybe when that study's done, we will finally be able to get tolls to improve our roads and improve our public transportation.
Another 30 seconds.
So I didn't realize that Senator Austin had all the answers to this, but I would respectfully disagree with the good senator on her opinion on that. We pay for the prioritized progress infrastructure plan, not $100 billion that the governor said, but $67 billion over 30 years that we pay for by shifting the emphasis on the debt service away from the Special Transportation Fund to the general fund. There are hundreds of millions of discretionary bond funds that every governor over the past 12 years have used for special projects throughout the state of Connecticut that we can put a hold on because our roads and bridges are more important. And we can do that without spending any money out of the Special Transportation Fund, let it build up its reserve, and then pay this money to put jobs in the state of Connecticut. Thank you.
Next question, Senator Formica from our audience. The questioner points out that because of flat funding and stagnant salaries, there's been high attrition, high turnover among the community of human services nonprofits. At the same time, there's a greater need for mental health and addiction services. That was the statement. The question is, what might the legislature do to address the issue of the burden placed on our nonprofit human service agencies?
We have some serious discussions that we need to have with nonprofits. Certainly, if it goes to the City of New London, where 50% of the property is owned, is non-taxable. So we have to come up and have a discussion about that. But the specific question with regard to nonprofits, we had a chance to change and move into the private sector by privatizing group homes, by doing a number of things that way that we were precluded to do once the CBEC agreement was passed, when it was provided a 4-year no layoff. So true consolidation of agencies and true moving forward is going to be difficult when you have the CBEC agreement in effect until that moves forward. But we do have to find ways in which we can make the government sector and the private nonprofit sector work together, because this is a community that we have to support. It is our first line of defense that we have to support, make sure the IDD community and those most vulnerable get what they need here in the state of Connecticut.
Ms. Mark, 90 seconds on that question.
Thank you. As a visiting nurse, I've been a visiting nurse for 25 years in southeastern Connecticut. Every day I'm in the home of the elderly, of the mentally ill, of people with opioid addiction, of veterans, and I cannot tell you how hard that the people in the human services work. I work side by side with them all the time, and I hear that they were just so excited this year that they got a 1% COLA raise, a cost of living adjustment. 1%. If we don't allow these workers to have an honest wages so that they are proud of what they do, then we're not going to have them working for us anymore. With the opioid crisis, we all know that we need so many more people out in the field, and you get what you pay for. And if we want the best people taking care of the most fragile, then that is what we need to do. We need to increase their wages. And I've already given 5 different ways in which I would increase revenue and increase jobs. Mostly increase revenue. I still have not heard any ways in which my opponent is going to increase revenue. He has said no to tolls. He doesn't believe in a $15 minimum wage. I'm not sure what he believes about the legalization of recreational cannabis. And he hasn't said anything about the carried interest loophole.
And the question that I'm answering is?
On the contention that funding has been largely flat funded for human service agencies at a time of increased demand with the mental health and addiction needs. Chance to respond in 30 seconds.
So there's opportunity here. If we can move some of these services away, and I do agree, they all work very hard in this, and it's a very difficult job. We have to move people to be serviced at home. But if we move some of this out of the public sector and move it into the private sector and shift some of the costs to there, then I think we could save the state money and save the state budget so that we can provide stability moving forward for the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. Next question to Ms. Marks. Should the state mandate paid family leave, and if so, how would it be paid for?
We absolutely should have paid family leave. And there's already a formula out there which take a very small percentage. It's earned family leave. It's not paid family leave. Every worker will earn it. Right now we have FMLA, which that's great. If your mother or father has Alzheimer's and you need to take them, stay with them for a couple weeks, or if somebody gets sick, I can tell you every day the stories about people that get so hurt or have a serious illness, get breast cancer, get colon cancer, and their loved ones can't take time off to care for them because, fine, they can take the FMLA, but they're not going to get paid for that, and they don't have any time saved up. And 40% of people in southeastern Connecticut, based on the United Way study, cannot meet their basic needs every month. So those people cannot take even 1 week off without pay. The earned family leave would be a breath of fresh air for so many people and allow our families to take good care of each other.
Your opportunity, 90 seconds. Should the state mandate paid family leave, and if so, how would it be paid for?
Well, paid family leave had an opportunity to come up, but it was never brought forward for a vote. There was a number of different conversations that occurred around how you pay for paid family leave. Certainly, it's something that everybody would love to have, the opportunity to have paid family leave. There's a question of the time. Is it 6 weeks? Is it 10 weeks? Is it 12 weeks? Is it 15 weeks? How many weeks are we talking about? And how is it going to be funded? Is it a payroll deduction from the employee that goes through the employer, that gets filed into the bank, that gets sent to the state? Who manages that, and what is the cost of setting up that system? We don't know any of those questions. We don't know any of those answers. So while it's a noble and a very good idea to have paid family leave, we need to make sure that we have the details, because businesses here in the state of Connecticut cannot afford more and more and more that's going to cost them to be able to be out of this state. So paid family leave, if it's going to be put aside, one of the programs that I heard is a portion of the funding gets put aside. It's going to take a year, maybe longer, for the state to collect that money. It's going to take tens of millions of dollars to set up a system and the employee base to manage that money. So those are questions we need to ask, and we just can't go into some of these programs, which may be wonderful, without answers. And my opponent doesn't have them.
If I was up there for 4 years, I would have had the answers. You be the mother whose kid is sick, whose child is in the hospital, that you can't stay with them because your government will not give you earned family leave. All you have to do is call up our neighbors in Massachusetts and ask them how they're doing it, and then we can find the answers. There are some things that everything Senator Formica, for the last 4 years, he needs a study, he needs to do more reading, then he needs another study.
Thank you. Next question to Senator Formica. Would you support or oppose the legalization of marijuana used by adults 21 and older?
I think we have to study that. Look, I've been up there. I've been in public service 23 years in the town of East Lyme, 4 years up here, doing and creating jobs and creating opportunities and working across the aisle for bipartisan opportunities. The question is legalization of marijuana. To be quite sure, I don't know. It was my vote that got that bill out of committee, 26 to 25 out of the Appropriations Committee. Otherwise, it would have died because I thought it needed to be looked at. And the bill was a study bill that was put forth by the Democrat leadership. So I got that out. It was never acted on because the votes were never there. So I think that the medical marijuana has been a big success. It's been something that we've been able to use and the people have been able to use, and we can't put that at risk. That has a place in healthcare. Whether recreational marijuana is going to be the answer, it's up there being talked about for one reason and one reason only, and that's revenue. That's it. We have a lot of other issues to look at before we decide whether the revenue is worth it.
Thank you. Ms. Marks?
So for 33 years, I've been a visiting nurse in the homes of the constituents of southeastern Connecticut. I have seen seniors go out on the streets to buy recreational marijuana, more to treat their illnesses, and now they don't have the illnesses, they don't have the diagnoses where they can get medical marijuana. UConn is starting a new course next year that's on the growing of marijuana from seed to plant. It's something that's in the future. It's not just for revenue, Senator Formica. It's for jobs. We will get botany jobs. We will get horticulture jobs. We will get chemist jobs. We will have project manager jobs. We will be setting up businesses. It's a business. So it's not only for the revenue, but it's also to create jobs, which then creates revenue. And the revenue that you get, you can spend on homelessness, you can spend on education, you can spend to help the veterans. We can get like $500 million is the projected income from it. Let's not be the last state to do this. We have some really smart people in Connecticut. We are one of the smartest states with the highest degrees of our constituents have the highest college degrees. We should be doing this, and we should be doing it right, and we should be setting an example. We don't need a study because there's 2 or 3 other states right now that are doing it. And once again, just like with earned family leave, we can call them up and ask them how it's going.
Continue for another 30 seconds? Well, I'm delighted to know that UConn has a good course coming up in
It's because you
in
didn't cut the
growing
funding.
marijuana.
It's because you didn't cut the funding.
Yeah. So the point is that there are a lot of things that happen up in the legislature over the last few years that turned into studies. Why? Because this governor and the Democratic majority squandered the money that was there, and there wasn't enough money to do anything more than to put a task force together, sometimes which they didn't even put forth. So I think recreational marijuana will be looked at in the next session, no matter who is up there, because they're looking at it for the revenue. But I think it's a dangerous and slippery slope to go down because there are a lot of questions that need answers before we can put that. And it's just not easy enough calling up another state and saying, hey, how do we do it?
Thank you. Ms. Marks, and I think this will be our last question before we move to closing statements. The question is whether, given the budget challenges Connecticut faces, do you consider funding to the arts and cultural community and to some of our tourist and performing arts centers to be a luxury, or do you see it as a funding necessity?
Thank you for that question. My son, Sean, is here sitting with me, and he will tell you, as a mother, that all of our extra time went into the arts and to culture. It is very important for our children, and it's very important for us as adults. The last 2 budgets that Senator Formica has been the author of, although he doesn't want to take responsibility for them, but when you're chair of the Appropriations Committee, he always goes back to the bipartisan budget. He wrote the initial Republican budget, and it cut the arts, and the arts were still cut. And tourism, every dollar you spend on tourism, you get $12 in return. Why would you not give tourism the money that it deserves? So I absolutely, when I'm up there, I will fund the arts and I will fund tourism with the revenue, with the 5 different ways that I've told you that I'm going to increase revenue for the state. I still haven't heard of how the Senator Formica is going to increase revenue.
Senator Formica, you have 90 seconds.
So again, my opponent is a wealth of misinformation. And I don't mean to be I don't mean to be critical. I should apologize for that statement. But the fact of the matter is, when we started that tourism caucus to focus on what tourism means to the state of Connecticut, we actually have more funding in the last two budgets going forward to fund tourism and to fund the arts, not less. We have more. In this budget, there is 1.5% of the 15% hotel tax, which is the highest hotel tax in the nation, but 1.5% goes there. That's going to generate roughly $13.9 million in this year to fund the tourism. And what the state receives from tourism dollars spent is $3 for every $1 in tax revenue, not 12, 3. And so tourism is a big and very important part moving forward. The new casino opens in East Windsor. Part of that money, 10% of the table games, is going to go to tourism. That should generate another $6 million. So inside of 2 years, if we move these processes forward, we'll have $20 million a year, which will be able to fund arts and culture, all the attractions, getting people here, creating jobs, doing the things that we need to do, especially here in southeastern Connecticut, and especially in those spots in southwestern Connecticut where we have wonderful attractions that we need people to come. They're job creations. And I have made sure that we funded tourism. So I'm not sure where you get your information, but the facts are not correct. And I will stand by the budgets that we put forward because I'm very proud that there are no tax increase and no tolls, which is quite a bit different than the budgets of the past.
Thank you. The last word on this one, Ms. Marks, 30 seconds.
I guess we're going to need somebody to do some fact checking after the debate, because I was many people in the tourism industry and on the tourism board called me and emailed me and told me, please, when you're running, please let people know that for every dollar spent on tourism, there's $12 in return. I went to a lot of meetings of the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition when I was as city councilor. We punch above the belt when it comes to the arts, and I'm very proud of that. But they have also told me that the arts continues to get cut, budget after budget after budget. I will not do that. And that was the last question, and my opponent still has not told us how he is going to increase revenue.
All right, I want to thank the audience with a couple of very small exceptions. You follow the rules, I appreciate that very much. We, by way of the coin flip as well, we determine the order of our closing statements, and we have a minute each, and we begin with Martha Mark.
Thank you. I would like to actually thank Paul, Senator Formica, for his years of service. But I do think that I am the right choice to be your next state senator of the 20th District. For the last 2 years, we've had to listen as the leader of our country said he was going to grab women by their privates, and Senator Formica sat silent. Then after Charlottesville, when the leader of our country said that neo-Nazis and white supremacists were good people, Senator Formica said nothing. Then when the president, I could go on with many examples, but the last one was when Dr. Ford testified, and the president of our country laughed at her and mocked her, which was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever witnessed, because if you've ever been laughed at, it's awful. And Senator Formica said nothing. I assure you, I would have said something. So, if you care about health care, if you care about women's rights, if you care about a woman's right to choose, if you care about collective bargaining, then I am your choice for state senator.
Thank you. Senator Formica.
Thank you very much to you, Paul, and to the Chamber and to the League. And Martha, thank you very much for the opportunity to sit here and have a lively debate on what's the issues of the day, although there are some facts checking that we need to do. I've had this great opportunity to serve as the senator here of the 20th District. I've worked very hard to work across the aisle to bring solutions that work for everybody in the state of Connecticut, not partisan. We were left a mess. We have made great strides to moving our budget into stability so that once that budget is stable, we can fund all of these other things. We can keep people here. We can keep jobs here. We can perhaps raise the awareness of some of these other issues that we can go forward. So I want to thank, for the last 4 years, I want to thank you to have that opportunity, and I look forward to moving into the next 2 years to really moving the state of Connecticut forward in a way that will have us to be the envy of the states here in New England, not the ones that's lagging behind due to what's going on. So thank you all very much, and I appreciate the time.
All right, thank you.